Excuse me. I see they've caught me in the corner of my basement looking at all these games right here. Speaking of which, why are you in my house? But that doesn't matter. I mean, it is Christmas time after all, and everyone is supposed to be welcome on Christmas time. You know, Christmas is all about, you know, receiving gifts, spending time with family, celebrating the new year, getting drunk, high, whatever you want to do on it. But one of the most important aspects about Christmas is the movies. There's so many Christmas classics out there that I figured that this year I'll talk about one of them. This year's movie being Home Alone.
Home Alone is a series that does not need a introduction. It's a series from the 90s about a boy named Kevin McAllister and his adventure when his family accidentally leaves him behind at their house, to which he is, get this, home alone.
He said it! He said it!
But this movie's most recognizable part is probably the home invasion sequence, when Kevin has to protect his home from home invaders when they try to rob Kevin's house. This scene features many hilarious pranks that Kevin plays on these home invaders, where they get humiliated, and honestly, there's some of these pranks that probably should have killed them, just flat out. But hey, this is a kids movie, so I highly doubt that anything like that would happen. Regardless, this movie was good enough to spawn a sequel, Home Alone 2: Lost in New York. This sequel is pretty faithful to the original, but still adds enough to make it stand out from the first movie, and it also adds enough content to make it seem like that this movie was actually made from like an idea, and not just a shameless cash grab. Now, unfortunately, I guess someone was not satisfied with the money that these movies made, and what better way to make more money than to make more Home Alone sequels? Unfortunately, 2 Home Alone movies just didn't make enough money, and it didn't satisfy too many people. So, we got not 1, not 2, not even 3, but 4 more Home Alone movies. So let's talk about them. So, before I begin talking about Home Alone 3, I just want to really reinforce the fact that this is the actual plot of Home Alone 3 and not some like weird joke. This is the actual plot. Okay. So we begin the movie with the 4 famous wanted criminals. I don't remember their names, so I'm just going to call them either the woman or the man. Anyways, this group has stolen a missile cloaking computer chip from a North Korean terrorist group. Again, I just want to reiterate, this is the actual plot of Home Alone 3. In order to get past security at an airport, the group puts the device into a RC car. However, when at the San Francisco airport, a woman takes the bag with the terrorist group's RC car in it. In a panic, the group begins to search many houses in the woman's area in order to find that chip. We cut to a 8-year-old boy named Alex, and after shoveling some snow for the woman mentioned earlier, she gave the RC car to Alex as a payment. Shortly afterwards, Alex catches chickenpox, and unfortunately, he has to stay home, during which he sees the terrorist group mentioned earlier snooping around other people's houses, to which he calls the police. Unfortunately for Alex, the terrorist group leaves before the police arrive. Later, a similar incident occurs where Alex sees the terrorist group and calls the police again. But again, they leave. The police at this point just do not believe Alex and think that he is prank calling them. After having no one believe in him, Alex decides that he needs to prove himself and catch the group. And he puts a camera on top of the RC car and tries to get some footage of the group, who are currently searching one of the neighbors' houses. He does actually successfully get some footage of one of the criminals, but the film on the camera has been taken out. Alex is curious as to why the thieves would want his RC car. He opens it up, and then he discovers the device mentioned earlier. Immediately, Alex calls the Air Force Recruitment Center to ask them about the device and to tell them that he has the device. The terrorist group realizes that Alex has the device, and then they decide to go after him. This is the point in Home Alone where we get the classic home invasion scenes that we've all been waiting for. Except, this time they're pretty bad. A lot of these are pretty lame in comparison to the previous movies, and some of them are just kinda stupid. Anyways, after the terrorists failed the home invasion, the FBI comes in and arrests the criminals. The movie ends with the woman from the beginning of the movie giving Alex another RC car, and Alex and his family celebrating with their dad returning. This was a long movie to get through. Some of the plot points were honestly kind of hard to follow, not because the lore goes deep or anything, but it's just kind of poorly explained. However, one thing I will give this movie credit for is that at least they tried to be somewhat unique. Home Alone 3 does actually try to establish some new characters and doesn't rely on any of the characters from the previous movies. You'll see why I'm saying this in a little bit. Anyways, even though this movie is pretty bad, I'll give it some credit for trying something new, even if it did fail terribly. Home Alone 4 is the direct sequel to Home Alone 2, starring the McAllister family again. I'm not sure how many years later this is to Home Alone 2, because Kevin is 9 in Home Alone 4, but in Home Alone 2 he's also 9. And this movie is supposed to take place one Christmas after Home Alone 2. So, I haven't even started describing the movie, and yet there's already just a big plot hole, and just, I don't know, dude, but this is just not a good introduction to the movie. Home Alone 4 begins with Peter, Kevin's dad, who is now divorced to Kate, which is Kevin's mom. Peter announces that he is now living with his new girlfriend named Natalie, and Peter tells his kids that him and Natalie are going to be hosting a visit of the royal family, and he invites everyone to spend their Christmas at his house. Kevin initially doesn't want to go, but after a little while, he goes to his dad's new house after being constantly tormented by Buzz. After living with his dad, Kevin enjoys his time at the mansion, but he goes into the security room at the mansion where he runs into someone named Mr. Prescott, who is a security guard. Going back to Kevin, he notices Marv from Home Alone 1 and 2 and his new girlfriend named Vera outside of their house. Marv and Vera try to break into Kevin's house, but Kevin gets rid of them by literally flooding his house. However, when Kevin's parents come home, they don't believe his stories, so Kevin tries to show them proof from their security cameras that are set up around the house. Unfortunately for Kevin, the cameras have been turned off by Mr. Prescott, who Kevin now believes is allied with Marv and Vera. At the party for the royal family, Kevin notices Marv and Vera at the party, now dressed up in disguises. Kevin gets rid of them and freezes Mr. Prescott in ice for some reason. However, the royal family can't attend the party that day because their flight got cancelled, so instead Peter and his new girlfriend announce that they're going to get married. However, Kevin destroys the atmosphere of their special moment, so Kevin's dad gets real mad at him and now thinks that Kevin is trying to purposely ruin his relationship with his new girlfriend. Still, no one believes Kevin about Marv, Vera, and Mr. Prescott, so Kevin decides to prove himself, and in classic Kevin fashion, he sets up many traps for Marv and Vera, but not Mr. Prescott because Kevin already locked him up into his basement. After a while, Kevin realizes that Marv and Vera's actual ally is the maid, and she's actually Marv's mom. What a crazy plot twist! Anyway, Kevin gets locked into the basement alongside Mr. Prescott. They both apologize to each other, and Kevin manages to escape through a dumbwaiter. Okay, I actually had no idea that these things were called dumbwaiters until I was watching this movie and did some research on it, so that's pretty cool. After some more running around and some more super funny and wacky and silly traps, Kevin's dad, mom, and sister arrive. They all chase Marv and Vera out of their house. The royal family arrives alongside of Peter's new girlfriend, and she is confused when she sees Marv, Vera, and her maid getting arrested. The movie ends with Prescott resigning from his job and the royal family choosing to spend their Christmas with Kevin and his family. Peter breaks up with his new girlfriend, and him and Kevin's mom get back together, and they all live happily ever after. Home Alone 4 is one of the most painful movies I've ever had to watch, and while it isn't the worst Home Alone, it's very close to being in that position. This movie's actors are pretty bad. Like, I don't even care that every single actor was replaced. Well, I do care a little bit, but still. But like, these actors just didn't even do a good job. The only actor that did a okay job was the actor for Marv. He was actually pretty expressive with some of his deliveries and some of his facial emotions. But that being said, he is still nowhere near as good as the original Marv. However, the other two villains were really weak and stupid. I get that it's kind of silly to be overanalyzing Home Alone villains, but my point still counts. Overall, Home Alone 4 is one of the most forgettable movies that I have ever watched, and I hope that I never have to watch this movie ever again. But if I do, someone better be paying me to watch it again. Before we begin, I'm surprised this didn't actually happen sooner, but this is the first movie that I actually fell asleep to. However, unfortunately, I did actually go back and finish the whole movie, so... The movie begins starring a new family named the Baxter family. They are currently moving to Maine and are going to their new house during this Christmas season. Our protagonist is named Finn, who is 10 years old, and his older sister named Alexis. The thing you might notice very quickly with these characters is that Finn is obsessed with video games and Alexis is obsessed with their phone. And this little detail is pretty much the entirety of both of their personalities, so you will see this reoccurring throughout the entire movie. Anyways, after moving in, the family decides to go Christmas shopping. However, during this, a group of thieves named Sinclair, Jessica, and Hughes. I know that it's pretty weird that I actually remember the names of these movies' antagonists, but when I watched this I wrote some of them down, just that way I wouldn't forget them. Back to the new villains. They're trying to break into the Baxter's house and steal a very old and lost painting that is somewhere around the price of $85 million. However, they didn't know that a new family had actually moved into the house, so when they tried to find the painting, they are almost caught. Later that night, the parents leave the house to attend a party that is being hosted by one of the parents' new bosses. The reason that Finn and Alexis didn't attend is because they were arguing with their parents earlier that day, and Finn is no longer allowed to play video games, and Alexis can only use her phone for emergency calls. Later that same night, the thieves return. Sinclair informs his allies about the story of the painting, and at the same time, Finn goes through his house and finds a controller. Now, he is looking for some batteries, but after finding some, he accidentally drops one of the batteries into the basement, and then Finn asks his sister to come with him into the basement because he is scared to go alone. She agrees, and while they are down there, they find the safe unlocked, and in there is a room. In this room, we can see the painting that Sinclair was looking to steal. The painting scares Finn, causing him to run out of the safe, which closes on his sister, trapping her inside. Back to the parents, they are told that a snowstorm is currently going on, forcing them to stay at the party. Okay, now back to Finn. Because he has trapped his sister inside of the safe, he decides to go shopping for some supplies to break her out of the safe. However, he's only able to buy some string. On his way back to the house, Finn accidentally bumps into Sinclair. Shortly after, he's able to hear him talk about their plans to break into his home. And after running back home, Finn befriends an online friend named Simon.
I've always felt alone. My whole life. For as long as I can remember.
Finn begins to tell Simon about the people trying to break into his home, so Simon begins to give Finn some advice about defending himself. However, Simon thinks that Finn is talking about a video game and not real life. After receiving the advice from Simon, Finn steps out more classic and hilarious Home Alone traps. And just in classic Home Alone fashion, the thieves go through the house and experience all the traps. During this, the parents are able to go home now because the mom made a speech about being a good mom or something like that, and now a snowstorm is okay to drive in or something like that, whatever. Also during this, Finn tells Simon that there are actual thieves trying to break into his house, and hearing this, Simon uses Finn's Xbox gamertag and his parents' credit card details in order to contact Finn's parents, and he tries to tell them the danger that Finn is in, but Simon really messes up in his wording, and he makes it sound really bad on his side.
What in the world? Hello?
Mrs. Baxter, I'm calling about your son.
Who is this?
You don't know me, but I just want you to know that your son is okay.
How do you know my son?
It's complicated, actually. We met online, and,
What?
Okay, so that came out wrong.
What, who is this, and how did you get this number?
I hacked Finn's gamertag, and I got your info from the credit card statement. I'm worried something bad is gonna happen to him.
What? Are you threatening my son?
What?
What? No, look, hi, my name is Simon Hassler, and your daughter is locked in the basement.
You kidnapped my kids!
What?
No, I know this sounds crazy, but...
I'm phoning the police, you sick monster!
Just let me explain for a second.
I will ruin you!
That did not go as planned.
Back at the house, the thieves capture Finn and detain him in one of the cars. Two of the thieves go to break into the safe while the other one watches Finn. However, one of the kid neighbors that Finn befriended earlier in the movie saves him by throwing snowballs at the thief, which literally knocks her out. Sinclair and Hughes gain entry to the safe, only to find Alexis threatening to break the painting if they come any closer. Finn comes to save his sister, and while the two make their escape, they close the vault door behind them, trapping the two thieves in the safe. With all the thieves defeated, the police arrive and take them all away. The movie ends with the family receiving $30,000 as a reward for turning in the criminals into the police, and on Christmas Day, Finn receives DLC to his favorite video game and a snowboard. Finn decides to stop playing video games and decides to go snowboarding with the kid neighbor mentioned earlier, and we all live happily ever after. I would consider Home Alone 5 to be the best out of these non-Macaulay Culkin movies, and probably the only one that I would consider to be, like, okay out of all of them. Like, it's not good, and I don't ever plan to watch this movie ever again, but similar to Home Alone 3, I like how they actually tried to build its own characters instead of trying to rely on ones from previous movies. And unlike Home Alone 3 and 4, there actually are some moments in this movie that did get a chuckle or two out of me. Specifically the scene where Simon and Finn's mom from earlier, where Simon makes himself sound like a absolute weirdo.
That did not go as planned.
I thought that scene was kind of funny. However, I still cannot and would not recommend anyone to watch this movie. First off, I hate the name of this movie. It's just a terrible pun. I'm not sure why it bothers me so much, but it just does. Anyways, before we begin, I just want to say that this is actually a Disney Plus exclusive, and if you can show me the one person who started paying for Disney Plus just to watch the brand new Home Alone 6, I will give you a shout out in my next video. Our plot begins with two parents who are named Jeff and Pam, and they are trying to sell their home. They have two kids who are named Abby and Chris. Unfortunately, Jeff has recently lost his job and he has to sell their house. At the same time, Jeff's brother, who is named Hunter, has brought his family to stay with him for Christmas. We cut to another family, where we are also introduced to our protagonist, who is named Max. Max and his mom Carol stop by an open house to use the bathroom. While Max's mom is in the bathroom, he and Jeff has to have some small talk. During it, they discover a box of dolls, one of which has a face that is upside down. Oh my god, is that Family Guy?
You wanna hook up?
Max's mom explains to Jeff that these kinds of dolls can actually be worth a lot of money because of how rare they are. As Max and his mom return to their home, their family is planning to leave to Tokyo for Christmas. Similar to the first Home Alone with all the McAllisters leaving together, Max gets really frustrated with his family because of how annoying they are, so he decides to go into the garage and enter one of the cars just to watch cartoons. Max stays there because there is no one else to bother him. However, his family doesn't know that he is there, so when they leave, they actually leave Max behind. Back with Jeff and Pam, they really don't want to have to sell their home for various different reasons, so they decide to go looking for the doll with the upside down face. However, they are unable to find it, and they come to the conclusion that Max actually stole the doll. The next day, the couple locate Max's home, and they plan to break into his house just to retrieve the doll. Which, I mean, doesn't even make sense, cause if he stole it, why wouldn't they just contact the parents and ask for it back? And even if they were gonna break into a house, wouldn't they just want to steal something that's more expensive because they're committing a crime either way? Whatever. That's too much thought for Home Alone 6, I guess. Max discovers that his whole family has left and that he has the whole house to himself. At first, he has a lot of fun with this, but he quickly gets bored and wants them to come back home. During this, Jeff and Pam actually arrive at Max's house and they gain access to the inside of the house. Max actually overhears them talking to each other about getting a ugly little boy. Max assumes that Jeff and Pam are actually talking about him, but in reality they're talking about the Family Guy doll. Coming! Thinking that Pam and Jeff want to kidnap him, Max calls the police, to which Officer Buzz McAllister arrives. No, I'm not joking. This is Buzz from the first two Home Alone movies. Well, technically he's also in Home Alone 4, but that movie sucks ass, so no. Pam convinces him that nothing is wrong, so he leaves the scene. Max's mom finally discovers that he was left behind and gets a ticket to go back. Jeff and Pam go to church only to find out that there is someone who wants to buy their house, and they have to decide on the end of the year if they're actually going to accept the deal. Later that night, Jeff and Pam return to Max's house, but actually end up in the backyard of his neighbor's house. Jeff dresses up as Santa in order to fool Max, and in classic Home Alone fashion, Max sets up traps in his house just like the last 5 movies. This idea is totally still super cool and funny and not overdone. Anyways, after a long confrontation, they realize that Max didn't steal the doll but instead stole a can of soda. They forgive each other, and because Max is home alone, Jeff and Pam let Max stay with them until his mother arrives. Jeff and Pam safely get the doll back, and Max's mom comes home, and everything is perfect. The movie ends 1 year later, where Max's family and Jeff and Pam's family spend Christmas dinner together, and we all live happily ever after. This is honestly my least favorite movie out of all these films. When I first watched this movie, I was really confused as to what was going on, and them switching families constantly made it a lot more hard to follow with, and I was just really confused, and for like the first quarter of this movie, I just had no idea what was going on, but eventually I did kind of get the hang of it. But this movie's criminals suck a lot. And this movie has the weakest villains in the franchise. I just really hate how this movie tries to make sympathetic villains. It reminds me of what I hated about Steven Universe, where it's just every single villain's actions are justified just because, oh, they have such a sad and tragic backstory. Wah wah wah. If you wanted to write a likable villain who is supposed to be sympathized with, make them like the main character and add character development to them. We can see this with characters like Arthur Morgan, Nico Bellic, Kazuma Kiryu, and more. You don't make them the antagonists of the movie, and even if you make Jeff and Pan the main characters for some reason, they are so poorly written that you just don't care about them. Even though villains like Harry and Marv do actually have devious intent with their reasons to breaking into homes, that duo is so much more likable and iconic in comparison. And like I said, I guess it is a little bit silly for me to be overanalyzing Home Alone villains and like comparing them to all these other characters, but I don't care, dude. Overall, Home Alone 6 is terrible. So in conclusion, you should only watch the first 2 Home Alone movies, and if you're curious, here's a tier list that I made of all the Home Alone movies. And before I go, happy holidays to you all, and for whatever reason they make a Home Alone 7, well then I promise I'll make a review on that as soon as I can. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you all later. See ya.